and a very warm welcome to the Open Door Show from Property CEO. My name is Ian Child, and I'm going to be with you for the next half hour or so. So what exactly is Open Door all about? Well, it's your chance to take a dive into the wonderful world of small-scale property development. On Open Door, we talk to the movers and the shakers out there, all in an effort to give you the lowdown on what's happening in the world of property. We also take a look at some of the areas where we think there could be a good opportunity for new developers to take a look at. And of course, as a property development training company, we kind of get to see all the things that our students encounter on their journeys. And so the other thing that we like to do is to shine a bit of a light on the challenges that can quite often get in the way of people on their journey, as well as share, I guess, a little insight and maybe a few tips on how people can overcome them. Now, in this episode, I want to talk about something that is, I think it's an essential part of good networking and good rapport building. But it's something that, well, I suppose I was going to say something I see people do badly all the time, but I don't really think it's that. I think it's just the fact that a lot of people miss a trick. So if you're missing this trick currently, then don't worry, you are in very good company, because until I saw the error of my ways, I used to miss that trick too. And the good news is that it's not going to take a lot of effort or money to be able to fix it. Now, the thing that I'm talking about here is that all important first coffee with somebody. We kind of got used, I guess, in today's society and the way we do business, particularly as property developers, but it's not just in property. There's lots of other situations in business where we look to have a coffee with people as a kind of natural, normally a second step, and maybe a third and fourth and fifth, but certainly a second step after that initial meeting. So whatever the situation, wherever you've kind of met somebody, maybe you haven't met them, maybe it's just like a phone call or an email exchange, or maybe you've met them at a sort of at a meeting, a networking meeting, or some other function, and both of you are thinking, well, actually, there's potentially some value in having a further conversation, and then the logical thing is to, well, let's go for a coffee, because frankly there's not normally a lot not to like about going for a coffee. We have, last time I looked, more coffee shops in this country than pretty much anything else, and so that you're kind of spoilt for choice. They serve cake as well, massive win. And everybody's kind of comfortable with it. It's kind of like a non-threatening thing. It's not like you're inviting them out to dinner or on holiday with you or something like that. It's a kind of very nice, obvious next step for people to kind of then start to explore the start of a potential business relationship. Is there any mileage in taking things further, et cetera, et cetera? So in the world of property development, who might that be? I guess it could be maybe just somebody you've met at a networking event. It could be maybe they're a potential private investor that somebody that you kind of met, and they've shown an interest, and you want to kind of explore that further. So coffee is the obvious next step. Might be an agent, a commercial agent that you're looking to hope find that they will give you deals, and you want to build a relationship with them. Maybe even a residential agent that might be selling your own properties. Certainly, it could be professionals like architects that you're and project managers and contractors and so on that you're looking to get to know. Perhaps you're looking for them to come on board, and you want to kind of establish that relationship. So again, lots of different scenarios where, as a property developer, you might end up going for a coffee with somebody. And the advice I'm about to give you here, this kind of tip, frankly, applies in any situation where you go for a coffee. So it's not just in property development. And I also can share with you that there is absolutely zero rocket science involved in this tip. There is absolutely none whatsoever. But the point is that if it's never crossed your mind before, then you might not do it. And so the idea of this episode is to just make it cross your mind so you can think about it, and maybe it's something that could work for you. Maybe you are missing a trick and you could take your coffees into the stratosphere going forward. Now, relationships in any business are huge. Property development, absolutely no exception. And of course, it takes time to build a relationship. They reckon that it takes 7 touch points before people will do business together. And I think the key point to make here is that there isn't really a shortcut to this. So you might be thinking, well, actually, that's a bit of a pain, isn't it? I've got to have 7 meetings with somebody over the space of a whole, weeks, maybe months, and that before they'll do business with me. Why can't I just book out a day and spend the whole day with them and get it all over and done with in 7 hours? And of course, the point is, it doesn't work that way, not by a country mile. What actually happens is that people reflect on the impressions that you had that were gained at the last meeting. We need time to have kind of stuff sink in, and also do some due diligence. So with each meeting, more facts are known, more things are revealed, things move forward. But then the takeaway invariably, whether it's spoken or not, is that people will do some more due diligence. They'll get comfortable. One of the things they'll do is sleep on it. So they'll wake up the next morning and they'll want to know, like we all do. It's kind of like, are the things that we felt at the time, we all sounded really good and everything else, but then actually in the cold light of day, after we've slept on it, do we still feel the same way? Are we still interested in this opportunity? So it isn't something that you can do all in one go. It's something that you kind of got to build up to. Now, one of the things that's kind of linked to that quite heavily, and I'll mention this a little later as well, is the whole concept of a gut feel, because that's really important. What is our gut feel? Our guts kind of, in some respects, can be a little bit hijacked in the emotion of the moment, when we're kind of live having a meeting with somebody and hearing about whatever it is. But ultimately, sleep on it, come back, reflect, and what does our gut tell us? Now, one of the big advantages of going for a coffee, in fact, there's several. It's relatively cheap, kind of inexpensive thing. It's quick, so it doesn't normally take a lot of time. It's usually enjoyable, depending on the quality of the coffee. And as I said, it's kind of non-threatening because it's what a lot of people do. And so nobody's going to be thinking, oh, this is a bit forward going for a coffee. They might not be interested, in which case it might be a thanks but no thanks. But assuming they're interested, then as I said, the coffee thing is a thing that people do. So no one's going to be alarmed by the fact that you've invited them out for a coffee. And as I said, if you throw in the whole kind of cake scene as well, then it can be a big win for many people. And there are definitely a lot more places to go for a coffee today than I think there's ever been. So how on earth can it be possible to get going for a coffee wrong? Well, let me tell you about the first time that I went for a coffee with Richie. So Richie Clapson, the other half of propertyCEO. I went for a coffee. So the second time I met him, I went for a coffee. So we had an initial conversation. I think if memory serves, he was speaking at an event. I went along to, I had a chat with him afterwards, but it wasn't kind of a place where it was possible to have a kind of in-depth conversation. I wanted a bit more of an in-depth conversation. So we thought, great idea, let's go for a coffee, and we can have a chat. So it happens every minute of every day across the whole country. So absolutely no issues there. Logical thing to do. Bit of a problem though. His diary was pretty manic. And so what we ended up doing, in order to have the meeting relatively quickly, we'd agreed to meet up at one of the chain coffee shops. If I remember rightly, it was in Eastleigh, which is kind of not it's a sort of small town in Hampshire. And we both happened to be kind of in the area on that day, so it was kind of a bit convenient. Now, the first thing that happened on that day is that I'd left what I thought was plenty of time to arrive in Eastleigh, but the traffic was absolutely appalling. There were roadworks, there was an accident, and so and it was stuffed to the gunnels. So not only did it take ages to get into town, I think I had to visit 3 car parks before I found a space. And so, as you do, I arrived late and a little bit hacked off by the whole kind of experience. A bit flustered. Sort of pseudo good news. There's no sign of Richie when I arrived. He'd experienced exactly the same situation. So we both ended up being late. But having got in, being the first one in, I had to find a table. So I had to find somewhere to sit. And that was a bit of a challenge. This place was absolutely kind of heaving. The windows at the front were all kind of steamed up. There was a huge volume of people in there. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of coffee shops, they kind of seem to have a bit of a rota going on. So before 9 o'clock, it tends to be the kind of the work crowd. So people in suits, people kind of working locally that are either having a takeaway to take into the office, or they're having a little bit of a pre-work meeting, build their courage up for the day ahead. And so that's kind of the crowd that you tend to get, I guess, probably before 9 o'clock. Then, sort of after that, you tend to get mums with normally toddlers and babies. So lots of prams and buggies and pushchairs going on. Then after them, you kind of get the lunch crowd, which is a whole kind of cross section, but includes the work people that have popped out for coffee and a sandwich at lunch. And then in the afternoon, after everybody's gone back to work, you get the old uns and the good uns in the afternoon, who kind of make up the crowd for most of the rest of the day. Now, for us in this situation, when I was meeting Richie, we kind of hit, I guess, what I think of as rush hour for the mums and toddlers. So it was absolutely heaving, and you couldn't move for pushchairs and prams. Eventually, I managed to find somewhere that came free. There's a couple of stalls right in the window at the front, kind of next to the door. So not the best place, because it was kind of interrupted every time somebody came in or out. And then when Richie arrived, it took us probably about 10 minutes to get served, because there was this kind of massive queue. And if I'm honest, when the coffee arrived, yeah, I don't know. People have different views about coffee chains and the quality of their coffee. Mine isn't particularly good. Given how much those machines cost, it's surprisingly awful coffee. But there it was. Not the best coffee in the world, but hey, had a seat. I was in a coffee shop. I was with the person I was supposed to meet, and I had coffee in front of me. So I guess it's a win. Now, as I said, throughout the meeting, we were kind of a little bit distracted, kind of really noisy, quite hot, people coming and going all over the place, massive queue. And then, of course, when we left, I was sat in traffic for about half an hour trying to get out of town, negotiating the same roadworks that I negotiated on the way in. So kind of overall, I ticked a box, managed to have a meeting, but as meetings go, not really the best. Cramped, full of distractions, overly long, the whole kind of experience, and yeah, not the best coffee. Now, I do absolutely accept that it is perfectly possible to have much better experiences of a chain coffee shop than I had then. But what I would say, and I've been to quite a few of them, is that quite often, probably all too often, actually, the experience is compromised in some way. It might not be that all of those things came together in one go, but yeah, normally one or two of them are kind of present. I'm not sure I've had the perfect coffee shop experience. Maybe I need to try harder. So here's the question: what does the alternative look like? Well, let me tell you about how I like to have coffee meetings kind of now. I happen to live within kind of striking distance of a Four Seasons hotel. Four Seasons have a chain of hotels that I presume they're all 5-star hotels. And it's not kind of over the top 5-star. It's not kind of palatial, but it's extremely well appointed. It has excellent staff who kind of are well trained to look after their guests. So that's the kind of, I guess, they're typical of the sort of experience you'd have in any kind of high-end 4-star or 5-star hotel. Now, I absolutely get that not everybody has a Four Seasons on their doorstep, but most people do have a decent hotel, so a 4 or 5-star hotel or something similar that is kind of within striking distance from them. So the point here is that whichever venue you choose, it's kind of a step up from and quite a big step up from going to a local chain coffee shop in the high street. Now, in the case of the Four Seasons, it's kind of lovely old kind of Georgian building, sort of country manor house type thing, sat in its own estate, loads of parking. It's got a very nice cafe, very smart. The table service is from waiters and waitresses that are kind of in uniform. The furnishings are all sort of sofas and armchairs and the like. Views out over the open countryside. Really, really nice place to have a cup of coffee. Also got a couple of restaurants. So there's kind of a fine dining one that's open in the evenings, and then there's a one that is sort of more sort of pub grubby, but still very nice sort of atmosphere, great service, and it's open all day, does lunches and dinners. Now, what I can tell you about the Four Seasons Hotel is that the rooms are not cheap. So a room, I think the really basic room, which is probably doesn't really do it much as a description, but it's starts at around about £600 a night and goes up to, if you fancy a suite, I think the most expensive one that I saw was £8,500 a night. So certainly not what you'd call an everyday stay. But here's the thing, and the real point of this is that the cafe and the restaurants are open to non-residents. And the point here behind why this just kind of works is because, of course, there's no real, it's a sunk cost for the hotel. They've already spent absolute fortune in decorating and training the staff and all the rest of it. So actually, they're very happy to have their restaurant, more customers in their restaurant. But of course, they have to, in supplying 5-star rooms to their guests, they have to supply 5-star everything pretty much. So the coffee has to be 5-star, the cafe has to be 5-star, the restaurants have to be 5. Everything has to be of a standard. But of course, we, in having our meeting, are not booking a room, hopefully. So it's just a business meeting. And the cost of a cup of coffee in the hotel, in the Four Seasons Hotel, is £5.50. Now, the cost of a cup of coffee in the chain coffee shop that Richie and I went to is £3.50. So a big difference in percentage terms, but not a big difference in pound note terms. So what does that extra £2 per cup get me? Well, I mean, it's a completely different experience. It's quiet. There's table service from highly trained and very polite staff. Furnishings, as I said, absolutely lovely. Interior designed to death. Room absolutely beautiful. Nice high ceiling, Georgian windows. Views out over open countryside. Views to die for. Loads of free parking. No queues. No traffic. And actually, the free parking, when I think about it, probably offsets some of that the premium that you pay for the coffee, because of course, how much does it cost to put your car in a town centre car park for a couple of hours? And kind of best of all, depending on how much you like coffee, coffee is amazing. Completely different league to what you'd get in a chain coffee shop. The clientele are fairly smart. It's not hot. It's not noisy. It's not particularly busy. And if I decided that I wanted to spot a lunch because my meeting's gone really well, or I wanted a lunch anyway, then I can get some decent food in a similarly lovely environment downstairs in the restaurant. So it's kind of a world away from that Costa's and Starbucks and all the other kind of chain coffee shops, which absolutely serve a need, serve a purpose. But for us having our meeting, it is in a kind of different league altogether. So what sort of impression does having a coffee, if you're meeting somebody for a coffee, what sort of impression do they have as a result of having you hosting it in a five-star hotel versus a chain coffee shop? Well, hopefully you can see, I mean, it's off the scale. I mean, it's completely different. Um, and their impression of you as well is also likely to be different, because you're kind of creating that impression that, without saying as much, that you kind of enjoy the finer things in life. I mean, if you're having your meetings in a first class hotel, then it definitely says something about you. When they go home that evening, if you'd had a meeting in a chain coffee shop, they're pretty unlikely to mention that to their partner, but they may well mention that they had a lovely coffee or lunch in a five-star hotel. And of course, the entire meeting is kind of far less distracted. It's much better quality. So the whole experience in terms of what you're able to achieve, the communication, the rapport building, all of that stuff is likely to be far, far better as a result of having it in that kind of environment, that kind of experience. You could make the experience even more impressive from your personal perspective if you got there early, had a chat with the waitress or the waiter, whoever happens to be serving on the table. So get to kind of introduce yourself to them, find out their name, try and build maybe a bit of rapport, have a bit of a joke or whatever. Clearly, it's going to depend on how busy they are. Quite often, though, you'll find that because good staff that are trained, don't grow on trees. So, and quite often the cafes are relatively small. So you may only find that there's one or two people that are on duty when you're there. But make the point of getting to know them and introducing yourself to them. And of course, what happens with all of the staff in a five-star hotel? They are absolutely trained to look after customers. That's their number one priority. So they're always going to be polite. They're going to humor you. They're not going to ignore you. Then, of course, when your guest arrives, you're there first. You can you sit them down, and then when the server comes over, you can address them by name. Just kind of reinforces the point that you must come here quite a lot. This is your home territory. So it kind of reinforces that kind of connection between you and an environment and a lifestyle and a whole kind of vibe that is associated with the environment that you're in. Now, hopefully, the point here is a really obvious one. I mean, it comes down to the kind of the maths. If you stayed in a five-star hotel, and I'm using the Four Seasons example, and you were to compare the cost of staying one night in that hotel in their simplest room with the equivalent simplest room in a chain hotel in the nearest town, you would probably be paying 600 in the Four Seasons. So let's say it's 100 in the budget hotel. So you're paying £500 to have a nicer experience. But if you invited somebody for coffee in the Four Seasons and you had, let's just say, two each, then you would be paying a whopping additional £8 compared to what you'd pay in the local chain coffee shop. I mean, it's absolutely peanuts. That additional investment of £8 to have an experience like that at a meeting in that environment, it could potentially be absolutely priceless. The impression that it leaves, the quality of the engagement that you have with that person is in a different league. And particularly, I mean, this is particularly true for property development. The people that you meet and the people that you need to do business with as a property developer have quite a lot riding on their relationship with you. If we think of it, who is that likely to be? Well, I mentioned some of them already, but commercial agents, you're hoping to get a deal from, for sure. But actually, if they do business with you, then what's in it for them? Well, they're going to get a sale. They're going to get some commission as a result of selling a property. So how much is that commission going to be? I guess depends, but let's just say it's four figures. So there's money riding on them having a good buyer. and ultimately getting a happy vendor and them getting their commission. If it's a professional, so an architect, structural engineer, contractor, you name it, any of the couple of dozen different specialists that you would be involved with as a property developer, they've got money riding on you. Ultimately, the property developer pays the bills for all the people that are involved in the project. And so many of those bills, many of those fees are likely to be 4 or 5 figures. So again, people have got a significant amount riding on a relationship with you. And of course, private investors have got even more money riding on you typically. That's going to be, what, a 5 or maybe even a 6-figure sum that you've been lent by an individual. Well, again, they're going to want to be particularly careful about who they invest to. They're going to want to be confident that they're dealing with somebody that's got the right values, it's trustworthy, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these people that you're meeting, are all absolutely critical to you being able to do business as a property developer. But equally, they're hugely important for them because there is money riding on the outcome. Now, to be honest, the whole thing about the Four Seasons tip, as I think of it, is really just one aspect of something that I see a lot of people get wrong, and it's about personal branding. When we think of branding, we do tend to think of things like websites and business cards and logos and all of that good stuff, and that's all great. But people don't do business with business cards or websites. People do business with people, and so what we've got to try and do is connect with people's values. And the great news here is that we do it all the time. So absolutely what it's like, because when you meet somebody for the first time, you judge them exactly the same way that they judge you. And in the environment where you're a property developer, the impression that you're looking to convey is one of honesty, integrity, professionalism. Do you know what you're talking about? And our subconscious is pretty good at working out whether someone has good values, whether somebody is trustworthy. And it's something that it's kind of inbuilt. It kind of originated in our evolution, where we literally lived in a life or death environment, where we had to make sort of decisions pretty instantly as to whether something was dangerous or not, fight or flight. And that has stayed with us. So our subconscious picks up on all of the kind of cues, visual and verbal, everything kind of goes in. And that's what generates our gut feel. So if you see somebody, meet somebody, and afterwards you think, there's something about them I wasn't quite sure of. Well, that's typically going to be your conscious doesn't know. Your consciousness hasn't necessarily worked it out, but your subconscious has kind of joined the dots and sort of noticed some things that it doesn't feel that it's happy with. And so it's kind of all of the things. It's not just the hotel you meet up in or the quality of the coffee by a country mile. It's all that other stuff, the eye contact, the handshake, the appearance, the body language, what you wear, how scuffed your shoes are. It's absolutely everything that potentially gets noticed, even if it's just by the other person's subconscious. So really important that you kind of, it's not just about the coffee, it's about everything about you kind of needs to be on point, and you need to be aware, because I think that's almost the biggest thing that people get wrong, is that they don't necessarily think about how all of those things combine to shape someone's opinion of them. And if you miss a trick, it doesn't take too much for people to be, because there's money riding on a relationship with you, for it to be it's just something that they don't feel quite right about. And when there's money involved, that can literally be a no rather than a yes. So important to get right. And if you follow my advice, you should improve the quality of the coffee you're drinking as well, which is a win. So there you go. Hopefully you found that useful. I do appreciate that it's not rocket science, but as I said, so many people fail to think about this stuff, and it really can make a big difference. And if your default venue for those sort of meetings is the local chain coffee shop, maybe have a think It doesn't have to be a posh hotel, but are there some other venues near you that could become your kind of go-to place for coffees and lunches? Right. Well, that's it for Open Door. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks' time. As ever, it'd be really good to hear what you think, particularly if you've got any other thoughts, suggestions, or comments. Please do put them in the comments below. In the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about how you can get into small-scale property development, we've put together some pre-recorded training for you. It's hosted by the inimitable, easy for me to say, Richie Clapson, and it's absolutely free. And you can access it at propertyceo.co.uk/SFR, where SFR stands for six-figure roadmap. That's it from me. Take care. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.